Hello, this is Cheney Robinson-Cain, and this is my presentation on collaboration and technology for special education students, a staff development lecture. And so we're just going to go ahead and get started with definitions. So what does collaboration and technology mean? Merriam-Webster says that collaboration means to work jointly with others or to cooperate with one or others that are not immediately connected. And they use the definition for technology as the practical knowledge, especially in a particular area or capability given by the practical application of knowledge. In other words, what this means is that collaboration means working together for a joint cause and or goal. And collaboration is not just for students, but also for educators and students, as well as educators with other educators. And in other words, technology is also a tool for learning. It is a way to apply what is learned to other practical uses of knowledge for further learning. And I pulled that definition from our textbook there. Some frequently asked questions are, what does that look like? How do I get my students to want to work together? I'm not comfortable using technology, and how could I start? Us ourselves as educators, especially with this fast-growing technology movement, can feel overwhelmed or out of place or out of the loop as far as the new technology that's going on, but it's easy to just start where you're comfortable and move on from there. So a few pictures in regards to collaboration and some ways of conveying what collaboration may mean is this top picture here, using each other's ideas, using each other's strengths and weaknesses to form together ideas and also work towards a common goal. The bottom left picture here is a picture of Jack Black in the movie School Rock, and he's a great example of being a vulnerable teacher, being one that shares his heart, shares his talents, and allows his students to do the same so that they could come together on one goal. And in this case, they were trying to save their school. So it's a great movie. You should check it out if you have not already. And the bottom right picture here is Tabletop Twitter. It's a cool interactive activity that we can talk about, or we will be talking about later on in this presentation. So let's get practical. Before we can start with anything, we should understand that being collaborative and being a team, it starts with you. Are you willing to be vulnerable with your students? If not, you should be, because in order to share those silly new ideas or new technology or demanding that your students be collaborative, you must also be the same. So whether that be with your team of educators when you're planning, or also just in the classroom, how open are you willing to be? Because in order for your children, or in order for your students to feel as if, or in order for you to even demand of your students to be open or to be open-minded, you must yourself be that too. You should also show care and hold high expectations for your students, and understand that being creative does not mean that you have to do the most expensive thing. In fact, being creative means doing well with what you have. Whether that's little or a lot, you should just be creative with that. And so what could you do? How could you start building a collaborative culture in your classroom? And so first off is your opening activity. So in the beginning, the very first day, you should set the tone in your classroom of your expectations of your students and also what they can expect of you. An example of that is in this last summer, I had a literacy camp, and I had my own classroom. And so before they even entered or stepped foot into the doorway, I had them do a scavenger hunt to get into the classroom, and then the last part of that activity was for them to be blindfolded, and then they had to lead each other into the classroom. So I was able to see who my leaders are, who's strong in one area, who's weak in another, and they were able to see that I put some time and effort into this before they even stepped into the classroom, and they knew going in, okay, she's expecting a lot from us, I can expect a lot from this class, I should be willing, this is kind of fun, I'm willing to be a little more open. So, and also kind of gets those first day jitters out. So it's a win-win for both the educator and the student. Something else that you could do to start building that collaborative culture in your classroom is to be organized, using daily agendas, sticking to a schedule, clearly defining those roles. That can be within educators, and also can be between educator and the student as well. But it's easy to come up with all kinds of great um, interesting activities. You can use Pinterest, you can use YouTube, you can use a plethora of different resources to get those ideas. But if you are not organized in the way of carrying those out, if you're not being collaborative with your team of educators and doing it, it could become a train wreck. You could interfere with someone else's lesson. You could just spend too much time on one thing. It could just totally flop, and you have no other way of getting across that lesson. So it's really good to be organized and to plan. Use contingency plans for those flops. Sometimes, it could really sound good in your head and in that imaginary classroom in your head, but sometimes it just does not work. So it's really good to plan for that time. And I use this meme here, my face after I give instructions and someone asks what to do. Because if you're not clearly defining anything, or if you're a little too all over the place, it could easily become that way, and the students can become a little confused. So no I in team. There's teamwork that goes into planning. There's teamwork that goes into collaboration in the classroom. And there's different kinds of collaboration that can be between educator to educator, between the educator and student. It's also between the students themselves. Educator and parents collaborate sometimes, or should collaborate often, actually. And then administrators and educators. And Ray and Connell, talked about in this article how administrators can produce an atmosphere that is conducive to collaborating within the school, within educators. So what can administrators do to make you feel supported? What kind of resources can they offer? What kind of feedback can they offer to make you feel prepared and well equipped to even be collaborative within your colleagues? And then there's 6 kinds of collaboration that Cardi and Marie Farrell talked about. It talked about how different kinds of collaboration may have different teachers work independently of each other, or they may work together in the actual classroom, or within the classroom. One may work independent, or they may work independent of each other, or may work together. But whether they're working independent of each other or together, they're still working together because they're working towards the same common goal, which is for the student to learn a concept. So some resources for you to use and take a look at is using Flipgrid. So I know we mentioned this earlier in the presentation, but Flipgrid would be a great resource for in-class and out-of-class assignments. So we'll go into a little more detail. I know I keep teasing you, but we'll go in a little more detail later on in the presentation. Google has great resources such as Google Forms. They also have Google Classroom. Something new that I saw today as I was looking on my email was Google Blogger, which looks like it would be a great resource for an ELA lesson, or really any lesson if you want your opinion on a child, or if you want a child's opinion on a certain subject, especially in this age where everyone is a blogger or a YouTuber. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to give their thoughts and opinions on something, and it kind of gives them full reign and independency on that. So that'll be a great resource for you to use, and also just using relevant technology themes in your assignments. So going back to tabletop Twitter, there was a picture earlier in the presentation, and it was a few students, they were writing on a big piece of construction paper. Just using the name tabletop Twitter really makes a difference. And so in stations, different groups or small groups go to different stations and they post, hence the name tabletop Twitter, their assignment or whatever the assignment asks for them to do. And so with them posting those things, it kind of gets them out of their seat. It's interactive. They get to work with small groups and they get work done, and concepts and learning is being done. So it's kind of a win-win-win for each person in the classroom. Also, take a look at your classroom. Using graphics in and around the classroom are really important. You don't have to spend a lot of money. Waterboy Graphics is a great resource in doing this, but it allows you to make your atmosphere in the classroom look as if you're willing to even step outside of your comfort zone and be different, not be the mundane classroom that they may be expecting to enter. Just be a little different. And another resource that you might want to take a look at is Remind. It's a resource, an app that makes you available to parents and also students, but mostly parents, in during the day of class and also after school. So let's take a further look into some collaborative efforts. So some things that I thought about that would be really good when you're collaborating with other teachers or educators is debriefing and briefing. And what does that mean daily? So really quickly, briefing means that you're simply going over what you're looking for, what you're expecting. Where this goal for this student is for them to read 20 words per minute or per book or per page for whatever their goal is, and briefing that so that everyone will be on one accord as to what the goal is. And then whatever the other lessons are, also briefing what activities that each educator is bringing to the table. Whatever your goals are, briefing and coming together and planning accordingly is really important. But just as important is debriefing. So whether that be daily, whether that be weekly or bi-weekly, however often you plan, you should definitely, most importantly, debrief. So what were your challenges? What were some successes? What were some reflections? What were some, cool stories that you've gotten, or some cool interactions that you've got to have with some of the students during your time with them? It's a great way and a great time to collaborate with your educators, to support one another, and to just remind you of the actual common goal before setting new ones. It's really good. Group work and team stations are important. Allow the students to work together, and even frequently changing their seats or their workstations. The only thing about that you do want to be cautious about this is being mindful of the technology that you're using and how often it's being used. And even with frequently changing seats, you want to be careful maybe with students with severe disabilities, or maybe more severe level of autism. They may not be super cool with doing a lot of moving around or frequently changing things. So just be cautious of what kind of students that you have in your classroom, and just modify and adjust in that way. And so just know what works for your students and prepare for any monkey wrenches. And they come in all kinds of shapes and sizes and colors, so just be aware of what that might look like. So some benefits of technology and collaboration is that it exposes the child to technology. It exposes them to different kinds of people. It also exposes them to different experiences. It improves their socialization, and it prepares them for the future technological advances in this world. Technology is changing by the week, by the day, really. And so it's going to be light years of difference from when they are in your third grade classroom to when they walk across the stage in 12th grade. It's just going to be different. So in this article with Meyer, they talked about how technology really helped their students who were autistic really improve their socialization across countries, because they were interacting with students across countries. And it can also help with class participation, because honestly, kids really like technology, especially them now. And this is just an example of a daily agenda that I used last year in my literacy camp class. And if you look in the small groups parts, after they read chapters 1 and 2 in small groups, they used Flipgrid to upload each group's thoughts of the words like tight, bling, and snake, and greasy. And so one of the key themes that they were learning about in these 2 chapters was connotation versus denotation. And so they could upload their thoughts as a group on Flipgrid and then move on to the next activity or next circle, and then together we would discuss the book and the reading. And so a teacher's perspective, lastly, is as the lessons go along, meet up to brief how each day or week is expected and discuss your roles and strengths, weaknesses, daily activities, and any school activities, and do this on a regular basis. And support one another. These efforts should be based on the students, not oneself, and use the curriculum to guide you. Most importantly, pull out the best of one another to pull out the best of your students, and be a unified front that collectively wants to see positive results. And these are my references. All right, thank you.